The sound of my name echoing from the sky changed everything. One moment I was sitting alone in the back row of my graduation ceremony, invisible to everyone who mattered, and the next moment, a helicopter was circling overhead with a banner that read, "Lieutenant Maya Chen, we've been looking for you." But let me start from the beginning, because the truth is, I never expected anyone to be looking for me at all. Graduation day at West Point Military Academy was supposed to be the pinnacle of achievement. 4 years of grueling training, perfect grades, countless hours proving I belonged in a world dominated by men, all leading to this moment under the blazing New York sun, where I would officially become an officer in the United States Army. I sat in the sea of crisp dress uniforms, my hands folded tightly in my lap, watching families embrace their new officers with pride. The Morrison family 3 rows ahead had reserved an entire section. Their son Jake, my former study partner, was surrounded by aunts, uncles, cousins, and grandparents who had flown in from across the country. Camera flashes lit up his face like a movie premiere. My section? Empty seats stretched on both sides of me like a wasteland. Mom had promised she'd try to make it. "I'll see if I can get the day off from the diner, sweetheart," she'd said over our crackling phone connection. But deep down, I knew she couldn't afford the train ticket from our tiny apartment in Detroit. Dad had been killed in action when I was 7, which is why I'd chosen the military in the first place. I pulled my phone out discreetly. No messages, no missed calls. The commandant began calling names alphabetically. My stomach churned as we approached the seas. When Maya Chen echoed through the microphone, I walked across that stage to complete silence. No cheers, no applause, just the polite clapping of strangers who didn't know my story. I shook the commandant's hand, accepted my commission, and walked back to my seat. Alone. That's when I heard it. A distant sound that didn't belong. A rhythmic thumping that grew louder and louder until conversations began to stop and heads turned skyward. The helicopter appeared over the Hudson River like something out of a movie. Sleek, black, and military grade. The kind reserved for high-ranking officials or emergency operations. The crowd murmured in confusion as it circled the ceremony, its rotors creating a wind that sent caps flying. Then I saw the banner. "Lieutenant Maya Chen, we've been looking for you." My name. My full name and new rank, streaming across the New York sky in bold red letters. The helicopter descended toward the adjacent parade ground, and I felt every pair of eyes in that stadium turn to scan the crowd, searching for the mysterious Lieutenant Chen. I sank lower in my seat, my heart hammering against my ribs. This had to be a mistake. A cruel joke. Maybe someone with my same name. Someone important. Someone worthy of helicopters and sky banners. The commandant had stopped the ceremony entirely. Military police were talking rapidly into their radios. Parents were pulling out phones to record what would surely become the most talked-about graduation moment in West Point history. A man in a general's uniform emerged from the helicopter and began walking purposefully toward the stadium. He moved with the confidence of someone who commanded respect from everyone around him. "Will Lieutenant Maya Chen please report to headquarters immediately?" The announcement crackled through the loudspeaker. "Lieutenant Chen, please report to the administration building." The cadet next to me, Jessica something, who'd borrowed my notes all semester without ever learning my name, suddenly grabbed my arm. "Oh my God, that's you! You're Maya Chen!" Suddenly, I was the center of attention. The invisible girl who'd spent 4 years blending into formation was now the most fascinating person at West Point. My legs felt like water as I made my way through the crowd. Cadets parted like the Red Sea, whispering and pointing. I caught fragments of their conversations. "Who is she? Never seen her before. Must be connected to someone important. Look at that helicopter." The administration building felt like a sanctuary compared to the chaos outside. The general was waiting in the commandant's office, his silver hair perfectly styled, his chest covered in ribbons and medals. He looked like he'd stepped out of a Pentagon briefing. "Lieutenant Chen," he said, rising from his chair with military precision. "My name is General Jonathan Blackwood. I represent a classified division of the Defense Department." I'd never heard of him, but the way he said it suggested I should have. "I'm sorry, sir. I think there's been a mistake, I stammered, still holding my commission certificate like a shield. I don't know why you're looking for me. I'm nobody special. His smile was warm but mysterious. On the contrary, Lieutenant Chen, you're exactly who we've been searching for. Please sit down. The office suddenly felt too small, too warm. I perched on the edge of the chair, ready to bolt at any moment. 24 years ago, General Blackwood began, opening a classified folder. A brilliant young officer named Major Sarah Chen made a discovery that changed everything. She uncovered a conspiracy that went to the highest levels of our government. My breath caught. Sarah Chen. My mother's name before she married my father. Before everything fell apart. Major Chen was working for our intelligence division when she disappeared. We never knew why. The investigation was closed, but we never stopped looking for her. Or her family. He slid a photograph across the desk. It showed a woman in dress blues, young and radiant, with my eyes and my smile. But this woman looked confident, successful, important, everything I'd never felt. Your mother was brilliant, Maya. And according to our research, you've inherited more than just her appearance. The helicopter ride to Washington felt surreal. Below us, the world looked manageable, orderly. Nothing like the chaos in my mind. General Blackwood sat across from me, explaining things that seemed impossible. My mother, the woman who'd worked double shifts at a diner just to keep us afloat, had once been a decorated military intelligence officer. The conspiracy she'd uncovered involved weapons deals worth millions, potentially billions. Why did she leave? I asked, watching the Capitol building grow larger through the window. We believe she was threatened, he said carefully. There were corrupt officials, people who wanted to silence her rather than let the truth come out. My mother had protected me by disappearing, by becoming invisible, just like I'd learned to do. The Pentagon felt like another planet. Endless corridors, people in uniforms moving with purpose, classified briefings happening behind doors I'd never imagined I'd walk through. We want to offer you something, General Blackwood said as we entered a secure conference room. Your mother's investigation was never completed. With your military training and your mother's files, we believe you could finish what she started. He handed me orders. Classified assignment, Special Operations Division, pay grade far above what a new lieutenant normally earned. There's just one condition, he said. You can never contact your mother about this. For her safety and yours, she must remain uninvolved. The papers felt heavy in my hands. This was everything I'd dreamed of. Purpose, respect, the chance to matter. But it meant keeping the biggest secret of my life from the one person who'd sacrificed everything for me. 6 months later, I was living in a world I'd never imagined. A secure apartment in Georgetown, access to classified information that made my head spin, and a team of intelligence officers who actually listened to my ideas. I'd thrown myself into my mother's investigation with an obsession that worried even me. 18-hour days, files spread across secure tables, dreams filled with code names and classified operations. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday evening in October. I was alone in the secure facility, surrounded by evidence boards covered in connections, when suddenly everything clicked. The missing piece of my mother's investigation revealed itself like a lock opening. I called General Blackwood immediately. I think I've solved it, I whispered into the secure phone, afraid that speaking too loudly might make the discovery disappear. Within an hour, the conference room was filled with generals, intelligence officers, and government officials. They examined my work with the intensity of archaeologists discovering treasure. The excitement in the room was electric. This is it, Colonel Martinez, the head of intelligence, announced. This could expose the entire network. But as I watched them discuss operations and cover-ups, a cold realization settled in my stomach. I'd become what I'd never wanted to be. Important. Visible. Involved in secrets that could destroy lives. Everything my mother had run from. The celebration dinner at an exclusive Washington restaurant should have been the highlight of my life. Important people shook my hand, told me I was brilliant, promised me a future filled with promotions and classified assignments. But I felt hollow inside. I excused myself to the bathroom and called the number I'd memorized but never dialed. My mother's voice answered on the third ring. Maya? Sweetheart, is everything okay? I closed my eyes, leaning against the marble sink. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. The silence stretched between us across 300 miles. Did you used to be in the military? I heard her sharp intake of breath. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. How did you find out? The story poured out of me. The helicopter, General Blackwood, the investigation, everything. I waited for her to be angry, to feel betrayed, but instead I heard something I'd never heard from my mother before. Fear. Maya, you have to leave. Tonight. Don't take anything. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Just run. Mom, what are you talking about? This is good news. I'm finally making a difference. They killed your father. The words hit me like a physical blow. I slumped against the bathroom wall, my legs giving out. What? Your father wasn't killed in action, sweetheart. He was helping me investigate the same people. They murdered him and made it look like a combat death. My mother's words shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. My father hadn't died serving his country. He'd been murdered by the very people he'd sworn to protect. General Blackwood isn't what you think he is. My mother continued, her voice urgent and frightened. He's part of the conspiracy. The same network I was investigating 24 years ago. They didn't want to solve the case. They wanted to find me. I thought about General Blackwood's kind smile, his promises of justice and truth. But he seems so legitimate. That's how they operate. They find idealistic young officers, make them feel special, important. Then they use them until there's nothing left. Through the bathroom door, I could hear laughter from the dinner party, my colleagues celebrating what they thought was a breakthrough for justice. Mom, I've already given them everything. I completed your investigation. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Then God help us all, she whispered. I returned to the dinner table with a smile frozen on my face, pretending to celebrate while my mind raced through escape plans. General Blackwood raised his glass in a toast to the brilliant Lieutenant Maya Chen, and I wanted to throw wine in his face. Instead, I played the part. I laughed at their jokes, accepted their congratulations, and promised to be in the office bright and early tomorrow morning to begin the next phase of operations. At midnight, I was in my apartment gathering only what I could carry: my service weapon, cash I'd been saving, and a flash drive containing everything I could remember about my mother's original investigation, the parts I'd deliberately kept incomplete in my mind. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Don't leave. We know you're planning something. Your mother's safety depends on your cooperation. They were watching me. Maybe they'd been watching me all along. I grabbed my field knife and wedged it against the front door. Then I climbed out onto the fire escape, my heart hammering as I descended 3 floors in the Washington fog. The city looked different at night. Dangerous, full of shadows where enemies could hide. Every car that slowed down made me duck behind parked vehicles. Every footstep behind me could be my last. I'd become invisible again, but this time it might save my life. Finding people who don't want to be found is harder than it sounds in movies. I spent 3 days sleeping in 24-hour diners and bus stations, using public computers to research the real General Blackwood. What I found terrified me. He wasn't just part of the conspiracy. He was one of its leaders, connected to arms deals and cover-ups that had been classified for decades. Military officers who'd worked for him had a disturbing pattern of disappearing or dying in training accidents after their assignments were completed. I was supposed to be next. On Thursday evening, a woman approached me in a coffee shop near Arlington Cemetery. She was about my mother's age, with graying hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through me. Maya Chen? She asked quietly. I was ready to run, but something in her expression stopped me. My name is Colonel Elena Rodriguez, retired. I worked with your mother 24 years ago. I've been looking for you since you disappeared. She slid into the seat across from me, glancing around nervously. Your mother isn't the only one who escaped from Blackwood's network. There are others. Military officers who realized what they were really part of and got out before it was too late. How many others? 12 of us are still alive. We call ourselves the Underground. We've been working to expose the truth, The real truth about what happened to our fellow officers. She showed me photos on her phone. Retired military personnel working in secret, gathering evidence that would be shared with honest journalists rather than buried in classified files. We need you, Maya. Not just your investigative skills, but your mother's complete files. Together, we can finish what she started. The right way. Colonel Rodriguez led me through a series of back alleys and hidden doorways that eventually opened into the most incredible safe house I'd ever seen. It was built inside an abandoned metro station, with communication equipment that looked both military-grade and improvised. The 12 members of the underground worked with a passion I'd never seen in official channels. These people weren't motivated by promotions or medals. They genuinely wanted to serve their country the way they'd sworn to. We've been working on this for 2 decades, Colonel Rodriguez explained, showing me their evidence. But we've been missing crucial pieces, the ones your mother took with her. I spent the next week diving into their work, comparing it with what I remembered of my mother's investigation. The differences were stunning. Where Blackwood wanted to cover up crimes, the underground had documented evidence that could expose corruption at the highest levels. This could change everything, I whispered, looking at their files. No more cover-ups, no more murdered officers, no more lies told to grieving families. But only if we can complete it before Blackwood finds us, Colonel Rodriguez said grimly. They've been getting closer. We think there's a mole among us. The paranoia was justified. 3 days later, I woke up to alarms blaring through the underground complex. Colonel Rodriguez was shaking my shoulder, her face pale with terror. They found us. We have to go. Now. The next months became a blur of safe houses, coded messages, and constant movement. The underground scattered to protect their evidence, communicating only through encrypted channels that changed daily. I found myself in a cabin in the Virginia mountains with Colonel Rodriguez and 2 other officers, working by candlelight to avoid electronic detection. We were so close to completing the investigation that I could taste justice. But Blackwood's agents seemed to be everywhere. They'd frozen my military pay, issued warrants claiming I'd stolen classified information, and somehow convinced the media that I was a dangerous deserter. My face appeared on wanted posters in military bases across the country. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent my whole life being invisible, and now I desperately wanted to disappear again. Maya, Colonel Rodriguez said one evening as we worked by lamplight, there's something you need to know about your father. I looked up from the files that had consumed my days and nights. He wasn't just helping your mother investigate. He was the one who discovered the conspiracy in the first place. He was brilliant, like you, and he was going to expose everything when they killed him. She handed me a worn photograph. My father stood in his dress uniform, younger than I'd ever seen him, with the same determined expression I wore when pursuing the truth. In his hands was a folder I recognized, an early version of the evidence we were compiling. He called it Operation Sarah, named after your mother. He was going to release everything to the press, make it impossible for anyone to cover up the truth. What happened to his evidence? He hid it before he died. We've been looking for it for 15 years. The location came to me in a dream, or maybe it was a memory I'd suppressed. I was 7 years old, standing in our basement in Detroit, watching my father work on something he called his special project. He'd made me promise never to tell anyone about it, not even Mom. It's in Detroit, I told Colonel Rodriguez when I woke up, in our old house. The journey back to my childhood home felt like traveling through time. The neighborhood had deteriorated even more since we'd left. Boarded-up houses lined streets where military families used to live, and the dreams of serving your country had given way to urban decay. Our old house was abandoned, windows broken, yard overgrown with weeds, but the basement still stood, and I remembered exactly where my father had hidden his most important work. Behind a false wall he'd built to look like normal storage, we found it. A waterproof case containing documents, photographs, and recordings that had been preserved perfectly. Operation Sarah, my father's gift to the truth, waiting patiently for someone to set it free. This is it, Colonel Rodriguez breathed, examining the evidence with reverence. This is what we've been missing. With this and your mother's files, we can expose everything. But as we prepared to leave, I heard the sound that had haunted my nightmares for months. Helicopters approaching. General Blackwood stood in the doorway of the basement like an angel of death, flanked by armed soldiers in tactical gear. His kind smile was gone, replaced by cold calculation. "Lieutenant Maya Chen," he said formally, "you've led us quite a chase. It's over." Colonel Rodriguez whispered beside me. "No," I said, surprising myself with the strength in my voice. "It's just beginning." I'd spent months running, hiding, being afraid. But standing in the place where my father had worked to serve his country truthfully, I felt something I'd never experienced before. The power that comes from fighting for something bigger than yourself. "You killed my father," I said to General Blackwood. "Your father was a traitor to his country," he replied without emotion. "Just as you are. That evidence belongs to the Department of Defense. This evidence belongs to the American people." I activated the live stream app I'd been preparing for this moment, broadcasting to every social media platform simultaneously. Within seconds, thousands of people were watching. "My name is Lieutenant Maya Chen," I said to the camera Colonel Rodriguez held. "For the past year, I've been hunted by corrupt officials who want to hide the truth about murdered military officers. But today, I'm going to give you something they never wanted you to have. The truth." 6 months later, I stood on another stage, this time at a congressional hearing in Washington. Operation Sarah had been released to honest journalists, and the first arrests were already being made in military bases across the country. General Blackwood's network had been exposed by investigations that revealed decades of corruption and murder. He was awaiting court-martial, his empire of secrets crumbling around him. My mother was in the audience, finally safe to live openly again. Beside her sat Colonel Rodriguez and the other members of the underground, no longer hiding in shadows but working openly with congressional investigators. As I testified about the future, a future where military officers could serve with honor rather than fear, I thought about that graduation day when I'd felt so alone and invisible. The helicopter that had called my name from the sky had been a trap, but it had also been the beginning of finding my true purpose. I was no longer the girl nobody saw. I was the woman who'd chosen to be seen fighting for what mattered most. And sometimes, the voice calling your name from the sky isn't trying to capture you. It's trying to wake you up to who you were always meant to become. The sound of applause filled the great hall, but this time it wasn't for me alone. It was for the hope that tomorrow could be different than today. More honest, more just, and free. That was a sound worth being heard. You know, standing at that congressional hearing felt like my West Point graduation all over again. But this time, I wasn't alone. You were there with me. You listened when everyone else looked away. You stayed when others would have walked away. Here's the hard truth. Most people who hear stories like mine just move on. They don't hit subscribe. They don't help voices like mine reach the soldiers who need to hear them. But maybe you're different. Maybe you understand what it's like to feel invisible in uniform. If my story reminded you that even the loneliest soldier can change everything, then I need just one thing from you. It's free, it takes 2 seconds, and it's the only backup I really need. Hit that subscribe button, because somewhere out there, another soldier is sitting alone at their graduation, thinking nobody cares. And your subscription, that simple act, helps their story reach someone who understands what they're going through. You served alongside me through this mission. Now help me complete it. The subscribe button is right there. For every soldier who thought they didn't matter, please, help their story be heard.